Welcome back, chess friends. We are heading into round 6 of the 2024 Southwest Class Championships. I'm at 3 out of 5 points, and things are about to get serious. We are about to play International Master, and the next 4 games, 4 consecutive International Masters. So, in these large fields, when you get a plus score at my level, you're definitely playing a strong International Master or even Grandmaster. So, let's jump into it. My opponent is one of the UT Dallas students, Karolis Juksta. Very nice young man. I spoke with a bit after the game, and a very strong player. So he had already drawn, I believe, Kaidanov and Jeffrey Xiong during this tournament, so very strong. And I prepared for this one and saw that he played an interesting line quite a bit. A big French player, but I didn't want to mess with that, and switching to the French would go with e4 here, but continued on. And I noticed he played the move here, bishop to b4. I had briefly seen this sometime, but wasn't familiar with this so-called Keres defense. I had no idea. I like Paul Keres, but I had no idea what to do here. So fortunate for me that I had prepared a little bit and saw a few games in this line. Saw he played after knight to c5. This would be a situation I would have been totally caught off guard, on my back foot, and probably just worse. But I had seen this and seen a few good lines here, at least getting to a safe landing place here after queen takes d2. And here knight f3. So actually this position has been reached many times, including a game Kasparov short and other grandmasters. It seems like most people take with the knight here, and some take with the queen. I decided, since he's going to have a lot more knowledge than me either way, maybe to go a little off the beaten path with queen. And then here, a few options. Now, I was kind of on my own here. I didn't know the best move. I had seen in another game, while analyzing before this game, I had seen that queen c3 was played by someone else in a similar position. I also calculated queen h4 and really wanted to make queen d6 work. Queen d6, tempting as it may be, really doesn't accomplish much. And after, say, a move like knight e4, the queen just has to move again. Notice your queen has moved 1, 2, 3, and now will be a 4th time. Here, only 8 moves have been played. So, didn't like that at all. I went with queen c3. A nice, comfortable square. You're kind of eyeing the g7 point, keeping things, well, keeping the center at least under control. He played castles. Bishop g5, a very natural move. h6, and here I decided to go into the endgame, maybe so-called queenless middle game, close to an endgame type position, but really just try to outplay my strong opponent here. I think this is something that lower-rated players are hesitant to do. They think more complications is their chance, which is generally true, but sometimes the position just requires a little more technique, and I was hoping at least that I was up to the task. I knew I couldn't possibly be worse here, and if anything, white was a tiny bit better, but it was going to be a tough game to convert. So I thought for quite a while here. Queens are gone. It's a whole new ball game. I realized just 11 moves in, we're comfortable, but far from a winning position. So took some time, asked myself a few questions. And for newer players, these are very good questions you should ask yourself. Where do my pieces belong? What could be more important, right? Where do my pieces belong? Do we want to fianchetto and use the pressure down the diagonal? Do we want to bring the bishop out this way in f3? Do we want to bring it out to d3? Do we want this rook, most likely d file will be where we operate? Do we want a castle? Do we not want a castle? Because it's not a dangerous situation. So really interesting here. I ended up playing rook d1. I want to point out also not castling long. I didn't want my king on c1 square. The move is probably okay, but in general, I thought moves like knight a5, b6, and one day you could imagine coming under some real fire, especially the c pawn and my king. So rook d1, rook d8, e3. I want to point out also for those newer to chess that a move like d5, which appears to free things a little bit, is really just not an option. This would be a positional nightmare for black. The pawns just being shattered here and almost for sure losing all the endgames. These type of positions, humans will often just not even consider seriously because the pawns are so bad that it's as if your position is built on a bad foundation. You're building a house in the sand here, and you just cannot make pass pawns later. These pawns are likely to get collected. So d5 is never really an option for a long, long time. So he plays b6, and I thought best to just force the issue here, knight d4. This actually makes a serious threat. Of course, a move like king f8 will just take. Never going to happen. The threat is that there is a pin here. That will never happen at a high level, but for example, any other move, we're probably landing, let's say bishop to b7, we're probably landing our knight on the d6 square and really slowing things down for black. Doesn't mean necessarily lost, but a very difficult position. I would have been very happy. So he took. What else to do? I thought for sure the best move was to take with the rook. I'm not sure anymore, but I thought it was at the time. Keeping an eye on the d7 pawn, and don't forget about this h pawn, which if the king for black drifts a little this way, which he's inclined to do, maybe this h pawn could become a target later on. Bishop to a6, bishop to d3, king f8, and king e2. Again, no need to castle in these games, for white at least here, because there's no more danger. We're in the endgame. Might as well just bring your king towards the center. Here, a key moment, and a move I really underestimated was e5. e5 was never possible earlier, and the positional, the structure of the pawns, just horrendous. However, it just seems to work here. He has just enough to get, at this moment, the next move d5 in, which I underestimated all of this. So a little bit on my back foot here after rook h4, d5 immediately. And there's real problems brewing if he gets a move like e4 in. So didn't want anything to do with that, not to mention then my king feeling under pressure. If it has to go back to the first rank, then this rook gets buried. We could really have a lot of problems here, and I just decided let's capture and go to this double rook endgame. I want to point out an interesting line, which I didn't give too much serious consideration, but capturing on h6, and somehow this pawn, maybe not the best engine move here, but this pawn, which remember was the d pawn, it couldn't move. This was a backwards stuck pawn, and somehow made its way from here to c3, and it's check, and perhaps to b2. Absolutely a miraculous improvement for that little d7 pawn. So wasn't going to let that all happen. So here's the real game. We played captures, bishop takes, bishop in between, king takes, and rook takes. I spent a lot of time at this moment kind of recalibrating to a rook endgame and calming myself down, understanding things are pretty good here. It's essentially equal, but what king move would you play? I wasn't sure to go king e4, which I eventually did, or king e2, which kind of holds on to the pawns a little more. A tough decision. King e2 probably runs into rook c8, was my consideration, and we're probably going to end up losing these pawns anyway. And in general, as a rule of thumb, you should play for activity in the rook and pawn endgames, and that includes your king. If your king is an active, good piece here, then at least you have some advantage over their king. Same definitely goes for the rooks. The more active rooks are just winning as a rule in rook and pawn endgames. So I played king e4. Let's go. Rook d2, and we have all kinds of pawns hanging here. 1, 2, 3 pawns potentially hanging. Rook takes h6. That does also now make the h pawn a pass pawn, and I was kind of banking on this as my winner. You don't need to diversify too much in the rook endgames with, I need a lot of pawns to pass. You just need one. Just one pawn as your key pass pawn, and that's enough to make the other team yield at least. So, of course, we're also threatening rook h8, but easy enough to defend king g7, rook h3. I liked rook h3, as now I can play one of these moves, or perhaps both of them. For example, checking the king, king f8, and then rook here, threatening, defending, multi-purpose move. The white king is better. The black rooks are better. The white pawns are better. It's really still a very balanced game. And he plays for activity too. A real lesson for those, again, newer to chess or improving young players, you really need your rooks active. If you are passive, if you are the defender, that is often just slow death. You need to activate. And here's a great example. He could take 2 pawns, either one. Take your pick, and he chooses neither, rather to activate his other rook. So natural move, I played check. That forces the king to the back rank. And then rook f3, which, like I mentioned a moment ago, guards the pawn and subsequently guards the g-pawn by not allowing it to be threatened, and also attacks the f-pawn. So a good multi-purpose move. King e7 guards that pawn, and king f5. Not sure about this move anymore. Really, maybe could have gone with h4, but king f5 it is, and rook c to c2. This is scary, but actually black is really walking a tightrope here, again, because of this h-pawn. It's the only passed pawn in the game, and white is just up a pawn right now. What saves black is their activity. Rook takes b2, h4, really the only move with any real consideration. And here I actually started to lose the thread a little bit. The move rook b5 surprised me a little. Surprised me. And when you're surprised, you are a bit on your back foot. So it takes real mental strength to kind of say, okay, that was a shock. Let me recalibrate, balance out, not get too up or down about it, and just play the best chess move. And I really was expecting a move like rook c2 and getting back, or just immediately rook d8. So when he played rook b5, this one was a little unnerving. I guess the idea is that h5 is no longer a real move due to e4. And although it's just a trade, he gets rid of my dangerous h-pawn. Didn't want anything to do with that. But I really didn't play the best move, and I should have really just followed the advice that I have known for many years and was giving to you all. Just activate. Get your pieces active. And this would have been the best move. And white is on track to win this game, actually. We're a pawn up. Our rooks are now at least pretty active, the c rook especially. This h-pawn is the deciding factor, and our king is clearly better. There are some cool variations here, and I'll walk through a little bit of that. For example, here, capture. And actually, white is going to end up putting black into a Zugzwang type position. For example, here, rook d8, rook h8. And black is running low on moves. Your king cannot move due to king takes f6. A move like c4, we can track that pawn down with our king. And because of this h-pawn, you really just can't move. The danger is very real, and white is very likely winning this game. So that was an interesting one. That would eventually lead to some Zugzwang type position. So now let's go back to the game. After here, rook b5, like I said, I didn't handle this the best. I played e4, preventing the rook from activating, and I thought activating my own rook a little more. So I thought this was a good move, but really it was not. Rook c1 best. There's rook c5, again, trying to get back here. And one thing I'll mention about the double rook endgames, there's problems always with your king. Don't think it's an endgame, I'll never get mated. For example, a move like h5 here, it could be almost threatening. Well, it would be threatening checkmate here, and any lazy move could really find ourselves in some danger. So mates are possible. Queen endgames, double rook endgames. So here's the real game: was rook g3, rook c8, f3. And f3 was really aimed. Now this pawn is guarded at, again, activating this rook. Whether I get to go to the c file one day or perhaps the h file, I thought this was a solid setup, but things start to kind of go off the rails. We're approaching here. We're on move 31, so we're approaching that 40th move. He plays rook a2 and f4. Again, guarding this seems a little clumsy to play f3 and then on the next move f4. So not sure if I could have handled that a little better, but here rook h8 and there rook c1. The activating move actually is black now that has a tiny pull, and I could feel the game slipping a little bit. This is actually one of two Rook Endgames I played against these IMs, and both of them had a similar path. I entered the endgame pretty well, started to drift a little bit, and then eventually made a draw. But yeah, here we are drifting a little. Rook check, and pawn takes e5, king g4. Again, we're threatening his rook, but also threatening rook c7. Here, a real big miss coming from me. Again, some time pressure here. I hate to just blame it on that, but this was very careless on my part. King d6, you could give that 2 question marks. Because here, if you want to try to guess the move, white has an absolute knockout blow. I played rook c7 and just quickly took the pawn. I thought this was good, but I totally overlooked the knockout, which is rook g to c3. And this similar double rooks checkmating pattern, as I mentioned, double rook endgames, there is real danger. And this is just checkmate. Very difficult to stop. Essentially, you have to give up material to stop it. There's one really crafty way here, was rook g6. King moves that are winning are king h4 and king h5. It's a human-looking move to play king h3, thinking maybe you are safest here. But now, actually, black has a miracle save with the brilliancy rook takes a3. That would pin my rook to my king. The mate is no longer a legal move. And if I take that rook apparently free, he takes this rook. So the game is still equal. If anyone is winning, it's actually black due to the pass pawn. So really big miss. And this would have been a fantastic game had I just found rook g to c3. If you gave me this as a puzzle, I would find it immediately. But in the heat of battle and tempted by a very natural material winning move, I just didn't find it. So that was really disappointing when I saw that after the game. I nearly just jumped out of my chair. So here's the game, though. Rook f2, which guards the pawn. Rook d3. And g3. That, again, guards the pawn, which was under attack. Here, watch out for checkmate. Again, we see this theme, king h5 or 4 both get mated to rook h2. So we played king h3, the only real move. And here on the 41st move, now we have 30 extra minutes to think about this game. He plays rook d6. And I thought here, with the 30 minutes I had remaining, for a good 10 minutes maybe, I didn't want to mess this one up. I knew the material was limited. Both moves are equal according to the engine, but I thought better to just keep the rooks alive. Capturing and king takes, I was quite worried about maybe their king being better placed, my king being a bit out of the key strategic area, in this case the center. So I did not do that. Instead, played rook c3 check, keeping the pieces alive, and that kind of ensures at least there'll be some counterplay if he were to make any serious threats or somehow win an extra pawn. Rook e7, hitting the pawn, and g4. I was really trying to bail out here, pull the emergency brake, so to speak. G5 is just bailing out and essentially trading all the pawns. The more pawns you trade in endgames, the closer you're getting to draws. Here, my opponent played rook f to d2 and offered me the draw. He offered me a draw, which is a good feeling because he is the higher rated player, nearly 2,500 US chess. And I thought for a little bit, is there any value in playing on here, g5, etc.? But I thought, I'd really be risking too much. game is likely a draw anyway. And of course, it secures a good result in another strong pairing. So I did accept the draw here. Engine reads triple zeros, which is good news. And we move on to 3.5 out of 6 in this strong tournament. So next up, another international master. And really a missed opportunity, if there ever was one, with this move. Rook takes a7. Again, very likely would have defeated my high-rated opponent had we found this simple one-move tactic. That was tense, time pressure moment, but very findable. So interesting game for sure. I really recommend that if you want to improve at chess, you study the endgames with the rooks or two rooks. And just whenever you see those, just be mindful. Perk up, pay attention, and try to improve your endgames. You will gain hundreds of rating points that way. So, all right, we will see you all in round 7, where we have another international master coming up. So let's see that game with the black pieces. Thank you very much, and hope to see you soon.